Hi, welcome. It's Mike Newton here at Lytham Golf Academy. I've got a little iron head-to-head for you here against two of Ping's irons. Now, obviously, I've just done the review of the G400 Iron, which is on my channel, so you can go and check that out maybe at the end of this video. I'm going to put that against its predecessor, which is the G Iron. So, obviously, Ping got to G30, they then went into G, they decided to lose the numbers, okay? But the numbers have come back again, and we've got 400. So, we're going to compare the 400 against the G, okay? It's going to be really interesting to see the performance differences here, because Ping are making some pretty bold claims here of faster ball speeds, much faster ball speeds, a better core eye technology, which is this in the back. You can see we've got it on the G here. They've improved that on the 400, and they've surrounded it with a bit of this rubber substance here, which I'm guessing is going to help with a little bit of sound and feel in the golf club, as well as a bit of aesthetics as we're looking at the back. But they're making some bold claims in terms of big ball speeds, higher ball flights, and they're the real things I maybe want to have a look at, and also compare a little bit of spin. And then from that, let's see if there's any distance gains here, because some of you may be carrying these in the bag and you're going to think, well, how much bigger and better this is this new 400? You know, companies are launching product pretty quick. Having said that, Ping are very, very different. It's been probably nearly a couple of years since G's been out, you know, so Ping aren't ones for chopping and changing very quickly. They stick to their sort of plan really, and launches and product launches and releasing new technology, and they do that very well. And I think they're very respected for that. And they have a lot of very loyal sort of followers. But anyway, let's get underway. So I've got exactly the same shaft here, 1/2 inch longer steel stiff. They're both green lie angles, okay, so they're both pretty identical. I'm going to swap the shafts over because these are the fitting irons, and then we're going to do a little bit of comparison on GC2, HMT. Let's have a look at some numbers and see which one's performing better. Right then, so we're going to start with the G iron first. Okay, so this was the iron that's been out for a couple of years. I say G400 is going to start to replace the G. So we're going to start with the G. We're going to hit 4 shots with each club, and then we're going to have a look at some numbers and compare. Okay, so first shot with a G. Okay, superb. Okay, you know, G's a very good iron. That feels really easy to hit. It's launching what looks like quite easy and looks to be going a fairly decent sort of distance. Okay, so before we look at any sort of numbers with those, we're just going to flick over to the G400. I'm going to take this shaft out, put it in the 400 head. So exactly the same shaft, same colour code, 4 shots with that, and then we'll look at some comparisons and numbers, and maybe a little bit of shot dispersion as well. Okay then, so now I've got G400, taking the shaft out of the G, putting the G400, same shaft, 1/2 inch longer, stiff, green colour code lie. Okay, so first thing that really stands out here is the difference of the colour of the finish on the head. The shape of the head's quite similar, but this, obviously the 400 has got this lighter sort of finish on, which to me does look a little bit prettier. Okay, so we're going to hit 4 shots with this. I'm going to try and keep the same swing speed. I'm not trying to hit these harder than one than another. I'm trying to keep the swings exactly the same, and let's see some differences in numbers, if there is any, of course. Okay, so there's 4 shots hit with the G400 iron. Again, felt good, very similar look to the G. The finish is different. There's a bit more technology going under the bonnet here. And let's see if we're seeing that translation of technology into some actual numbers, and maybe some physical more yards, or maybe better ball flights. Okay, so let's have a look at some data first. So first of all, we're going to look at shot dispersion. So the red ring was the G, the white was the G400. So we can clearly see some longer shots with the G400, but obviously dispersion's just widened slightly. That's a bit more me than the club. You can't really sort of blame the club for doing it because they've both got the very similar offset there. Look-wise identical, lie's identical. Obviously that's a little bit more me more than the actual golf club. So it's just two that turned over slightly more left against the G, which has just widened that dispersion a little bit more as we look at it. So numbers, we're seeing a tiny little bit more club head speed with G400. I didn't really feel that, to be honest, but obviously it's there. You know, it wasn't something intentional I was doing. That first one was a little bit quicker. Again, I didn't really sort of feel that. Ball speed obviously just increased a little bit, probably because of club head speed a little bit more. Launching a fraction higher, which goes along from what Ping is sort of saying, and it's spinning a little bit less on average. So 6.4 against 5.8. Peaking distance a fraction higher, probably because of a little bit of launch there. Having said that, the spin's lower, so it should sort of flatten off the top of its flight, but it's still peaking higher than the G. Okay, and the distance gain there is 4 yards between it against, you know, the G400 against the G. So a little bit more length out of that. But you could sort of question, well, is that coming more because of that little bit less spin, touch more ball speed, a little bit less spin there. Okay, so G against G400. So we're seeing some numbers, maybe where the G400 in terms of distance, okay, and many golfers will look at the distance number. They're not too worried on spin. You know, the golfer who's in that sort of mid to high handicap area isn't too fussed at you know, a difference of maybe 500 revs in its spin. You know, if they can squeeze 4 yards and possibly could be more, depending on the individual, they're going to be all over that. You know, they're going to want to say that is hitting it further. That is giving me that club less. Maybe there's a second, you know, shot going into a green. I'm going in with 8 iron instead of 7 iron. It ticks a very big box for them. For me personally, you know, I'm a different player. You know, obviously the looks is a bit chunky for me, but that's me personally. Having said that, I could quite easily game them because I think as I sit them behind that golf ball, it's very confidence inspiring. But I'm seeing that with both irons because the shapes are very, very similar. The finish, however, for me is the G400 is far superior in the finish. It's the same finish as we've seen on the I200, this hyper pearl finish, which gives it a sort of a bit more of a classic sort of finish on it, as opposed to the old days of the G sort of 2s, the G5s, the G 10s, 15s, 30s, that blasted finish. No ferrule on it. Now I've got ferrules, a lot cleaner, a lot prettier looking, a lot better looking from the back, I would probably say. So look wise, in terms of finish, I'll probably edge G400. Distance wise, I'll go G400. Spin wise for me, probably the G under that test itself. Okay, but as many of you will know, if you look at strike, I could test this again, those spin numbers may just sort of alter slightly and be a little bit closer, purely on strike location. Okay, we've got to look at it as an average. Okay, so screen's a little bit more ball speed, a little bit less spin with the G400, but we're seeing a little bit higher flight and more distance. So that may tick a lot of boxes for many golfers out there. Okay, I'd love to hear your comments on this. You know, is this something you'd go out and test yourself, G400? You know, Ping, they make very solid performing product. We've seen it over the years. They don't change it massively in terms of shapes and looks, but they just tweak this technology each year, and we're seeing some little gains here. But maybe comment down below. Let me hear your thoughts. Is this an iron you want to go out and test? Okay, it's a good, for me, it's a good solid iron yet again from Ping. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. Please do subscribe, and hopefully we'll catch up with you all very soon.